Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at a Gloom Xaku build. As part of the final roundup, Xaku was another suggested frame. He was actually a little bit difficult to figure out, so let's hop right in. His one is Zada's Whisper. Now, just like the old one augments Shock Trooper, Freeze Force, Fireball Frenzy, this adds void damage to your weapons, but not only that, it also adds it as a separate instance of damage like multi-shot. His 2 is a radial disarm that functions a bit like Loki, however it also steals their weapons and lets you use them. The damage of these weapons scales with the levels of the enemy you stole them from. Now his third ability packs quite a punch. It is actually 3 rolled into 1. We have Lost, which is a little bit like Nyx's mind control that corrupts enemies into allies. We have Gaze, which works a bit like Hora's Ensnare, but instead of pulling enemies in, it strips their armor in a radius. Then we have Deny, which is just a big beam of damage. Finally, his 4, the Vast Untimed, Xaku strips off his shell, creating a massive slowing aura and granting themselves a 20% movement speed. It also freezes the timer on all of his existing abilities until it expires. Enemies struck by the blast will also have their void damage vulnerability increased. Finally, we have his passive that has damage reduction to AoE attacks and chance of avoiding incoming damage. Now that we know how his kit works, let's see what I did with it. I chose to replace his one Zada's Whisper with Gloom, as we don't really have much of a need for void damage on his kit. Gloom synergizes pretty well, as it benefits hugely off of range, which is a core part of his kit. The drain of Gloom on the build is a bit high, but once you have his whole kit set out, you'll be freezing both the duration of his 2 and 3 with his 4 only occasionally, so it really isn't too bad. His 2 and his 3 will be your main parts of your kit to deal extreme amounts of damage that scales with the level of your enemies while also full stripping their armor. Combining the slow of Gloom and his 4 makes it so that survivability is very easy to come by and you no longer have to worry as much about shield gating. So let's take a look at the full build. The first thing you'll notice is we're choosing to slot on Growing Power to have a extra strength source. Then I'm also opting for energy conversion so that we can actually reach that 200% mark for armor strip while maximizing the amount of slow on the Gloom. We can push the Gloom even further by bringing a primary kit gun equipped with Pax Bolt, which will increase our ability strength by further 30% and efficiency by 30. Once we have Glooms cast up, we no longer need to worry that much about it because it will persist for the rest of the run at about an 89% slow. Then we'll be casting our 2 to give us a little bit of safe space and disarm the enemies while setting up our scaling damage. After you've casted your 3, you can freeze everything down with your 4. At this point, your 2 and 3 are up indefinitely, so long as you manage to recast your 4 every single time it falls. The insane amount of range on this kit is super important because every single one of your abilities scale off of it, most importantly Grasp of Lock. This not only determines the amount of guns you can steal, but also the radius you can steal from and the engagement distance of the guns. With how you have to cast your 4 about once every 30 seconds, we opted for a balanced duration and efficiency build, as the total drain between your Gloom and your 4 once you have everything up still comes out to about 380 energy per minute. For this reason, Arcane Energize is extremely important on the build, as each time it procs you regenerate 175 energy, so if it goes off twice a minute, you're already at 350. Any other pickups from this point is a surplus to maintain your 1 and your 4. For your other arcane, because we're not raining down on energy orbs, I opted for Arcane Strike for my melee. But you can also just use the Grasp of Lock guns to power through everything, as they will get stronger the longer your run progresses. At that point, you might just want to opt for Nullifier, or actually take Arcane Eruption instead. Now for alternatives on the build, we can actually run Augur Secrets instead of Streamline. This way you basically have a 98-97% armor strip with just Growing Power, and you do not need to rely on energy conversion when you cast your armor strip, but I do feel with the active drain from Gloom, you will start proccing energy conversion a lot and it won't be an issue. Alternatively, if you're going for endurance runs, you may want to consider dropping Stretch for Rolling Guard so that you do have some iframes if enemies do manage to make it through that 95% slow and your armor stripping aura, as well as the minute stun from your Grasp of Lock firing. Although I would opt for keeping Stretch instead and running Rolling Guard in the Augur Secrets slot, as I find range is more important than strength. Now your primary kit gun guild for Pax Bolt is your very standard Viral Hunter Munitions setup. Just keep in mind you do have to kill enemies with the shot itself, and the bleed out from Hunter Munitions will not proc Pax Bolt. Because Xaku's guns are so powerful, you can opt to run Xeneric instead to get better uptime on your initial setup while also pulling enemies into one point with Void Singularity. For your companion, today I'm opting for Wormprime because this is all what I have. Negate will be useful here for blocking magnetic procs. You won't have to worry about knockdown since you do have Prime Sure-Footed. Prime Regen will keep it alive, and the Sense Fiber sets so that you get the holstered reload bonus if you are using your melee, as it will reload your Kuva Nucor while you're swinging. Fired Up is another very important mod, so that you have better heat weighting on your Ver-class Sentinel weapon, which is an extremely overpowered Sentinel gun, essentially a Glaxon slapped on. You're going to be using this to proc up viral and heat stacks on anything you immediately can't kill. If you're opting for the Grasp of Lock gun damage instead, I would actually recommend bringing a Panzervolpaphyla to spread as much viral as possible, because the damage of the guns do benefit from that viral aura, and this way you don't even need to worry about your Kuva Nucor as much, as even things out of range will be primed with viral. So let's take a look at how this build plays out. It is very important to proc your Pax Bolt at the start, and you do also want that energy conversion. Now if you tag an enemy with your Kuva Nucor for growing power and now cast your slow, you're up to 89%. From this point, you're free to cast your 3 and your 2, well actually I'd recommend casting your Radial Disarm first for better survivability, and then you have your first Armor Strip aura. You can place up to 2 of these at once, and with the massive amount of range that we have on the build, it will give you massive potential to lock down the tile for full armor strip, so long as you proc energy conversion first. You can see just how wide our gaze range is. Now as I said before, the power of the guns does scale with viral, and if you're going endurance, you will want to recast it, as the damage of the gun scales off the level of the enemies, while the actual health scaling tapers off on the higher end, so your TTK will improve. The rest of this footage is showcasing how the build plays out in Steel Path. The first thing I'm going for is proccing Pax Bolt, and then I'm proccing my Growing Power and Immediate Slow. I didn't wait for my energy conversion to set up here, but I can always just reset my Gloom later with it. The next thing you'll want to do is disarm the enemies in your immediate vicinity for even more survivability while your Gloom is busy expanding. Then you can cast your 3 for your first Armor Strip aura. If you had energy conversion proc first, like I said, then it will be a 100% strip. You can produce 2 auras of this, so use this to your advantage to cover your front and your back. Now for the Acolytes, you can actually cast Gaze on them, and it will completely lock them in place, but also make them invulnerable. On the other hand, it does store up all the damage you do, so if you do enough from whether your Gaze expires or you uncast your 3, all the accumulated damage will go at once. Your slow still does work on them, so they won't really be able to do much to you, and you're free to slash them down, with the exception of violence. You may want to keep an eye out for her, as she can shut down your abilities if she gets too close. Well, that's it for the Xaku build I wanted to show you today. I hope you liked what you saw and I lived up to your expectations on what you were hoping for. I tried my best to find out synergies with the kit, although you really do want to keep an eye on the energy consumption. If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like, or better yet, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 75.8% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to bring you all the information I can about Tempestarii, as well as planning ahead for the Sisters of Parvos mainline that's coming out, so you don't want to miss out on any of that. That's it for this video, thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.